Where are we going? North.
Welcome to Dungeons and Dragons.
Therapeutic benefit in role-playing games.
Welcome to Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh yeah, baby.
Your presence requested in exchange for treasures.
Are we talking one treasure each?
All right, welcome back to Dungeons and Dragons. We're continuing with Early Dark. Last time we learned a lot about who we are as a group and what our main mission is with a disturbance and a family tomb. And I myself, as the most elite, have been conscripted basically into leading a team out for the good of the Nefaratha. And it was the Crown Cast, the spiritual leaders who requested this of me and what we needed to do. So take it away.
Excellent. So I guess our adventure doesn't have a title. The title I made for it gives away too much. And so I think maybe we can call it The Tomb and the Tower. That'll be our working title. And just to start out, I'll do with the CATS system, right? We'll talk about the concept, the aim, the tone, and then the sort of subject matter, right? So just as a brief intro for the adventure. For the concept, I think we covered that. You will be a team of Nefaratha rights and their underlings and their helpers going to investigate an ancestral tomb where something negative has occurred that has both rippled the loom enough that the druids noticed it, and also done something, which we'll find out in a minute, that let the crown take note of it as well, right? So it's going to be a little bit of travel, a little bit of investigation, and a little bit of trouble, I think. For the aim of our meeting here, then, part of it is to, the bulk of it is to tell a cool story with these four main characters. We're hoping that we can do some roleplay. We're hoping we can do some combat. We're hoping we can do some exploring stuff. And I think, we've got a good space and a good amount of time to do that. Also, to sort of introduce people to the game of Early Dark and how the system's a little different and how the world's a little bit different than some other things, and still very true to that dark fantasy tradition or genre that's out there as well. So I kind of see that, having that fun with these four main characters and really getting to know them, since you only get experience points when you roleplay. And stick to your alignments, and then being able to showcase or mention the system a bit and the game a bit as well. When it comes to tone, the way I do it, I always try to play really serious and then end up being less serious than I want to be. So I never try to be silly. In my mind, I pretend silliness is the devil and avoid it at all costs, even though I end up doing it half the time. So that's, I guess, is my tone and approach. I've listened to you folks play, and I think there's definitely it will fit in just well.
We know this well.
But I'll try, I'll try to take a moment to gather myself before describing a turn, because Early Dark it requires that sort of open description for your turn. I think sometimes it is good to sort of take that 30 seconds and then say your turn versus sort of cobbling it together as you go, where you think as you talk, and so you end up where you didn't start, sort of thing. So I guess that plays in a tone for me with just the idea of, we'll be a little careful. I talk really fast. I'll try to talk a little slower and just be a little careful with it. And if things get silly or things get weird, I think that's fine. I play, maybe not campy Conan style, but the silliness will come out and we'll laugh, just like I've seen.
But you've punched your fair share of camels.
I have been spit on and punched.
Okay.
By fair share. Even lizard on a stick. So I guess tone for me, I think it's in line, right? I'll try to be, serious dark fantasy, but it's not going to be horror. No one's going to turn up their nose if people make a fart joke, right? When it comes to then, I guess, subject matter and then maybe even some safety stuff, I don't think there's nothing in this game that's, I think, borderline. There's no human sacrifice. There's no sexuality. We'll be traveling. The thing about Early Dark, as I mentioned before, every system is oppressive in their ways. And so, it's kind of how power plays out in different societies. So, we may have Adana here might get a little bossy and, can rely on there's the structure of their society to do that. And it's definitely not a celebration of hierarchy or class systems or caste systems in any way. It's more about just sort of, tweaking our head, exploring different modes of being, and seeing what that can help us see about our own society and our own sort of maybe latent or invisible and implicit social structures, right? So there could be some of that when it comes to the norms. You know, we have the heavily patriarchal Alagoth folks here, even though both of our Alagoth characters are kind of on the fringes of that society. You know, we have this daughter who is making a better life for herself by getting out into the world and doing her own thing with the druids here. And then we have a very matriarchal society with the Nefaratha, and they have been bitter enemies for a long time, but you know, as civilizations do, they still make do, and they can get along when they need to. And so yeah, there might be some tensions there. Again, I don't plan on sort of like pushing that, or, you know, people getting into fights over the race and gender issues that you know are prevalent in these cultures. But that, if you're playing on your alignments, you know, some characters might role play along there. And yeah, there's no sexuality or anything I have planned. I don't do sex in my games, so I guess we didn't really do like alliance and veils or anything. Again, I apologize, but I've seen, you know, your episodes enough to kind of to know that there wasn't really going to be any issues there. But yeah, just on like I don't do like child horror, and I don't do sex in my games. I just sort of never have. So, but yeah, so that's what we got: our concept, our aim, tone, and then subject matter there. So for the tomb and the tower, you all are being then pulled to the chambers of this crown. So you are in what would be this large, austere sort of marble building in this gorgeous lake district, this oasis lake district tucked away at the edge of our desert. The rights have been called here by their boss. The two druids, let's say, you are already in this room. You have been here, you've been sort of fed the delights, the deliciousness. You're probably too dusty for this area, and you're hairy, and that's gross to the folks here. And so you're definitely, you know, the outsiders hanging out, and you are being hosted in what could only be considered like one of the most, definitely the most luxurious setting you have ever seen. And the crowns of the Nefaratha, you know, this whole moiety, this whole group of people are considered like the keepers of lore, the keepers of their religion and information, and sort of the conduit between the gods and the people. They make up a very small percentage of the population, and they definitely are a ruling class with all of the things that come with that in this society. And so you are here in these chambers. You have not met the crown yet. You've just sort of been kept waiting. And then when Adana shows up with her retinue behind her, it's finally time to have the meeting. So you are now being escorted then, and you imagine this place, bright, shining sunlight outside, but very dark to keep away the heat inside, right? So most of the windows are covered with tapestries. The chambers are very large, just again to show the power of their architecture, but also as a way of moving the air and sort of trying to keep the cool during these hot parts of the day in the desert. And you are being escorted then by all the servants to see the crown then reclining on her throne, awaiting your arrival. And I'm going to read a little bit of text here. This is a regional lord, celebrated as a god incarnate and living a life of imperial luxury. Glistening, oiled, completely depilated, clothed in gold coils and wide ribbons of pale blue silk and folds of bright pleated linen, right? And this is for the Nefaratha here. These are, you know, nigh on magical folks. And she calls you up and she explains to you, making sure you're all taken care of. There are plates of grapes and wine being passed around. Feel free to partake what you like. She seems very upset and explains to you, I have something to show you. Please come this way. Adana, you've probably met her a few times before. Adana, leave your retinue behind. I just want the four of you to come this way. And so she takes you over to a side chamber next to her much larger sort of, not quite throne room, but the hall where she meets her guests. She takes you inside, and in this then much smaller chamber, sunlight coming through very small holes, just sort of strobe lights of sun in this darkened room. You can see all the dust sort of floating through the strobes. It is a very strange, gnarled statue of a man in pain, kneeling and staring up at the sky, twisted in just anguish. And she says, how do you like my art?
It is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen.
Yes, it's finely crafted, and the marble is exquisite. The problem being then, you know, this is my ancestor. This is Tesh Teshi, who died or moved on 400 years ago. And this sculpture here looked very different 2 days ago. And she has some, servant who is nearly invisible against the darkness of the wall, then pull aside a tapestry and show you a large painting. A painting of the same sculpture, but the sculpture is not in pain and standing up with arms raised towards the sun. And she says, strangely, this statue here has changed. I have talked to my auntie, I have talked to my mother, and they have explained to me that this particular statue was made during the weaver's lifetime. My great ancestor didn't quite fit the ideals of the Nefaratha in some ways, but did serve our family and our people well. But this sculpture was made just before he died, and we've always sort of taken it to be, to keep us attached to where we've come from. And slowly, over the last 2 days, the statue itself has warped and moved and shifted. And my auntie and my mother tell me that this must mean that something has gone wrong in the family tomb. And as much as I don't want to really have to worry about that, I have seen this marble statue warp before my very eyes. And so I need you folks, I need you, Adana, to lead an expedition out to my family tomb. I will supply you with the maps and things like that. And we really need to keep my mom and my auntie happy and make sure we figure out what this is. Because while this is an exquisite piece of art, thank you, dear Crimson, it is troubling to me to have seen it move. And you can even see now like another tear like forms on the marble eye and actually like, rolls and like moves down the marble cheek. And Adana, if you're wondering why these dirty goths are here, it was actually this druid himself who maybe helped us realize that it could actually be something to do with my ancestors' weaver past, and maybe a disturbance that might be affecting more in other regions and not just that particular tomb. So you can allow these foreigners safe passage through this region. Do not let any harm come to them if you can. Some of their expertise may come in handy.
We'll make it the utmost priority to shield them, that they may get to the root of these foul magics.
And please depart as soon as you can, maybe as early as the morning. You'll have tonight then to prepare, but it seems like with the way this thing has been changing, we might not have too much time left. And so you can probably roam these grounds as much as you like. You can ask questions with the folks however you want. Usually the way we roleplay in Early Dark that works out really well is you can do whatever you want. And everything you do, though, is very easily attached to a footing. So do whatever you like. Roleplay as much as is natural to yourself. Speak in first or third person. Whatever you like. And then when anything meaningful might arise, we'll just do a roll in the footing that you've already been roleplaying. And so sometimes it's up for the rest of the group to kind of figure out what that might be, right? So if you're being sneaky and furtive and we ask you to roll with guile and you're like, whoops, I don't have a high guile, that's kind of your own fault. So, just like roleplay however you would like. Again, it's not so much open or freeform because we can always throw it back to that roll whenever you want, right? There's always things you can get. I'm always bouncing between the narrative and the mechanical. So, feel free to, start your roll or start your turn with a roll. Feel free to start your turn with some roleplay. But she definitely wants you to be leaving by the morning. And whatever you might do tonight can help set you up. We've talked about retainers, we've talked about equipment, we've talked about things, whatever it might be to set yourselves up. You have free reign of my resources. And she leaves in, a little bit of a huff, and you're sort of escorted back to that large chamber with many of her servants ready with their styluses and their abacuses out, ready to take your order and help you.
I think first, Theruvis's first question is if she would be able to examine the statue in a more arcane manner, if that would be permissible.
Yes, we'll take you through another tunnel to get there, though, since you can't go back and through her chambers.
Of
you
course,
can definitely. Would you like to spend a bit of time doing that and have some rolls to yourself over there? Or do you want to just do like a quick glance and get back to the group? I'm fine either way.
I think her goal is to see if she can't divine what kind of magics are causing this statue to contort in the way it is, to hope better prepare both herself and her traveling companions to hopefully be prepared for whatever magics that might be awaiting them.
Cool. Well, I think that could be a whole trial. I can set up a little mini trial here, which is like a series of hits, almost like a skill challenge or something you'd have to get. And maybe we can imagine that that's what Theravis will be spending the night doing, waiting for the different light from the stars or moons to come into the room as well. And that can be sort of some rolls that you make, and trusting that Adana will set up the supplies.
Yeah, I'm down with that for sure.
Okay. So in here then, so I'm just going to write sort of like what we consider a basic trial, and I am going to tie mechanical things to everything. Like, why not? Especially when, like with the enemies, the way that the aptitudes are sort of malleable in ways. Anytime you're rolling, anytime you're getting sort of tax of successes and sort of spending your talents and things like that, it will have a mechanical consequence later, right? Like I don't play sort of OSR style, I guess. Early Dark isn't written to be like, there's a trap behind that door, you either find it or don't. Always necessarily. It can be that your rolls we're in some ways playing to find out, right? Your rolls can definitely change what's afoot, because I think that just leads to better stories that way. So that was like the assumption of the game. Obviously there are traps and tricks in the module, but Theravis might come up with something good that changes things in the future, right? So I'm going to write down a little bit of a trial. I'm going to be kind of thinking of it. Other folks can kind of take their turns. Once we figure out what everyone's sort of doing, then maybe we can jump into what roles would be necessary.
So I am going to motion to Shezaran as well as Adana and say, obviously I have research to do. So I will commence to the library, to the church, to anywhere where I could find historical documents about the family, but also about this individual specifically, people he might have angered, things he might have done, what is sort of his heritage, and in order to glean who might be, throughout all of this history, who might be wanting to, influence their grave or influence his person or do those sorts of things. And I will offer for Shezaran to come with me, but it's certainly not mandatory.
Yeah, I think I'm going to ask Wakayoda if there's any particular resources that he thinks we'll need for the upcoming journey. I'm interested in talking to the staff to figure out what kind of retainers might be on hand, if there's any additional resources we could afford ourselves, if they have any pack animals maybe that we could explore. I can examine the quality of, determine if they'll be of any use on our journey.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea, and I think Jonas there too sort of like set up another thing, kind of like Theravis is going to be doing sort of like a research type thing. I think what Shezaran just did there, I think that could be a real easy sort of first roll, right? We imagine Adana is like organizing the sort of larger scheme with the supplies, and there's like a bunch of horses out there. And if Shezaran is like going and like literally looking the horses in the mouth, that's like a pretty great, easy, immediate roll, right? So as Adana is, whatever commanding these things, we'll find out in a moment. Shezaran actually gets to look that horse in the mouth and see what happens. And this is also a great way, just to bring up like, I was going to make them sort of boring pack animals, but now we can make them something cooler, right? So what do we think we're rolling for that?
So I think relate will be one, and I was thinking probably touch.
Yeah, I think that's perfect. I wasn't testing you, but that was the right.
I felt tested, but it felt right. So
yeah. So go ahead and you're going to grab your 9 dice,
yep.
And you're going to be rolling then against a target of 8.
All right. Okay, I rolled a 47. And
you're going to take every individual die and try to add it up and sort of put it in a little group there.
Okay.
And in most cases, if we're rolling a simple check, which this is, it's just whatever the largest tack you can get is going to be sort of the force of your roll.
And so in this particular type of roll, am I trying to group them lower than the target or higher than the target?
You want to fit as many dice as you can under that number of 8. 8 or lower.
Got it. Okay. So I rolled 2 9s, so I'm just going to put them in their separate tacks. Yeah, throw them out. Okay, then I have 3 to 4, 7. Yeah, I mean, basically after the 9s, everything is under an 8. So,
How many can you add up to be under 8?
how many can I add up to be under 8?
Yeah, what's the most number of dice you could fit under 8? If you have ones, twos.
Let's see, yeah, so 2, 4. I have the largest set is 3. Oh, actually, you said it has to be explicitly has to be under 8. Can't meet 8.
8? Nope, 8 or lower.
8 or lower. Okay. Yeah. So I have one tack that's a 4, a 2, and a 2.
Okay.
So that's the largest tack.
Okay.
That's 3.
So perfect. So in a normal sort of simple check, you want to try to build the biggest group you can when you don't need multiple tacks. So for these folks that are investigating, we're going to make a small skill challenge. They're going to be trying to roll for talents and hits and try to get as many as they can. For you, just sort of like an easy check, like, hey, let's see what happens, roll a check. It's just whatever the biggest group you can get, right? We're going for that primary tack. And you can fit
Gotcha.
3.
Yep.
So you've got then a force of 3. And that's a good enough difficulty for me. If you want to, you can find, you can choose the horses and you can choose the pack animals. Any one of them will make a fine retainer since you have the ability to do that. With only a force of 3, I'm only going to let you pick one of the stats though, and the other one's going to be up to me or up to a random roll.
Cool. So I'm just picking any of the pack animals.
Yeah, you can decide if you want it to be a mule, a camel, a horse, something creepy or interesting, and you tell me which stat you want. And this can be, you're connecting with this animal.
Yeah. What about llamas?
Cool, I dig it.
Sweet.
And what's the aptitude you would like available in case you have to ever roll as a retainer?
The aptitude I want available is...
What aptitude do you think they're going to have a higher one than you?
Fight.
Okay, cool. He's got a sassy llama.
I want a fighting llama. Yeah.
Yeah, sassy llama, man.
The only llama that just looks angry constantly.
Okay, and we'll say then 2 and a 1. Oh, and it has a very low cunning, which is available to you though also. So it has a 1 cunning. Its fight though is going to be a 4.
Sweet.
And okay, so you have this. Alagoth is sticking her fingers in the faces of all of your pack animals. How about you, Adana?
Well, of course, redundancy is expensive but indispensable. So, I'm looking for. I guess first and foremost, I'd be looking at all of the people who are going with us and inspecting their armor and making sure that it is of the quality that I demand of lords and warriors as a kind of a general figure myself. Make sure that everybody is ready for combat. And I think that would be the first thing, both in terms of preparedness for war, but also it's kind of like ritual. Like it's like armor should be, cleaned and sharpened, and what needs to be sharpened is sharpened, and what needs to be reinforced is reinforced.
Mm-hmm. And the presentation of the soldiers to the leader type deal. I like that ritual element. So what are you rolling for that then?
Okay. So let's do. Man, so I feel like it's not actually like related to combat. I guess is like the spirit of an element of fight, but also relate. I think it's like the presence, the bond of soldiers. So does that make sense?
Yeah.
Fight and relate.
Yep, perfect. And we'll say go for hits here. We'll make a small trial. So try to make small attacks of 2, and for each 1 hit that you get, we'll have an NPC that's worth having a cute name and being a part of our team. Let's say, you'll have 10 people, but which are the ones that are actually cool enough to maybe have a name?
Okay. And so I'm trying to fit also to 8.
You have 9. Oh, sorry. Yes, 9 mundane dice under a target of 8 for fight relate.
Okay. So 9 mundane. Do that. So, okay. Ooh, all right. So I have 3 1s. That's good. Okay.
Yeah.
3 1s. Then my next lowest is a 4 and then a 5. And then I have 7, 8. So 1, 2, 3. So I guess 4 total if I have 3 1s and then
A 4. But we want you to make little small 2-tacks. We want little hits, just little groups of 2. Is a good way, like what they're going to be doing later with their research. I'll give you 1 NPC for every group of 2 you can make.
Okay, so like 1 1. Right.
Well, you might want to go like 7-1 is a group under 8, 5-1 is a group under 8, and 4-1. You've got 3 hits there.
Okay.
Right? Put your 4 in your 1 in a
yeah,
group. Put your 5 in a 1, 7 in 1.
Yes. Okay.
Was that good? So you can get 3 groups?
So yeah, if I have 7 1, 7 1, 8 and 1, 5 and 4.
Well, you're rolling it under 8 here. Your target's 8.
Okay, so I'm sorry. So my target is 8. I rolled the 9. My target's the 8.
Yep.
Okay. So I have one that is just, or actually I have 2 that are 8s.
Okay.
So 1 7, 1 7. Yeah. So yeah, sorry. So you were right. Yeah, 3.
So you've got 7 1, 7 1, and then either the 4 and 5 with the 1. Yep. So with 3, then we'll have 3 names. You can come up with those, and you've got 3 more people you can boss around, and more folks that people can use for minions or retainers later, right? So you come up with those 3 names. We've got our researchers over here, and Theravis, you went first. How are you going to be examining this statue?
So I think my the player's thought process was she was going to try to use blood magic to try to divine what kind of magics might be causing this to happen. So maybe a ritual to say you use blood in a ritual, and then she reads the the signs of however the blood falls or whatnot.
Yeah.
To try to see if she can't determine what might have caused this.
Cool. I'm thinking that's like Thrive Cunning.
Yeah, that works.
Cool. And what I'm doing is I'm combining you alls into one trial. So the more hits that the 2 researchers are going to the more hits that they're going to collect over the course of this whole setup and travel, we're not going to get a result to your stuff until we get out into the wild. Okay, I'm going to leave you. You're doing research stuff that's going to be combined into one challenge together. So you're also rolling for hits.
Okay.
Does that make sense in the difference, right? So like in a basic check, you just want 1 big tack to see like how good you do. And then when we're doing sort of like a skill challenge or more of an ongoing, what's called a trial, you're always just going for hits.
Yeah, no, definitely.
Cool.
That makes sense. All right, so I would be rolling my arcane dice, and my target would be my cunning and thrive together.
Yep.
So that would be 6.
Yep. Oh, the physical sound of dice rolling on the table.
I did not do well. I got 2 sticks.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have a 6, and then I have a 4 and a 2.
Okay, perfect. Well, you want to fit 2 dice under it. So the 4 and the 2 count.
Okay, then that's all I got.
Okay, so you've got 1 hit there. The sculpture doesn't respond to your blood, but your blood sort of pools away from it almost like mercury.
Okay.
So the statue doesn't move or change, but you see your blood, and then someone comes and cleans it up.
Oh no, it goes back in me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know if anybody watched that, but she. Well, I guess anybody who was she probably asked to be left alone because her magic isn't for the faint of heart. Because anybody who witnessed that would have had to deal with the shock.
Yeah.
But she put out her hands, and anyone who witnessed it would have seen that her weight isn't necessarily to unhealthy life choices, but she has way more blood in her body than she probably should have, because she just pretty much pricked her the top of her hand, and blood pooled out, and that went out to start to divine the magics, and then when it was done, the blood went back in.
Nice. Yeah, it's like Carnage, or wasn't that like has all like the strands and the red lines coming up and pulling back. Yeah, cool. So then we'll say you're spending a few hours.
That's fair.
Playing and seeing what you can do with
ritualistic magic is time consuming.
Yeah. And what about our druid then?
So I'm going to be doing pretty, just straight sort of research, looking into the family history, family crest, family names, epithets, local reputation, and so birth records. So it would be any local library that would be open, any sort of church that might have the records, any sort of way that I could just get my hand on as many first-hand accounts as possible, and then kind of using my feeling to sort of get a gauge for how what sort of business might this family have been up to, who might they have angered, did the specific person who the statue is made of have any specific rivals, those sorts of things. And so pretty just hard-nosed, get in a book, try to avoid people as much as possible, like say hi to the research librarian, to the clerk, and like, yes, I'm here to look at your pages on official decree of this lord, and just be done with them immediately.
Okay. I would imagine if you were researching like a Wright family, that would be a pretty easy cunning touch. Because you're researching a crown family, I'm going to make it the touch and guile, right? There's going to be that little element. You're going to have to be a little more careful, and a little more smooth to get access to some stuff, right? So let's roll it like a touch guile, kind of like your canvassing roll. Okay. And you won't be in a public library. Mundane. What's that?
It would be a mundane roll,
yes.
I would assume. Okay.
Yeah. And you're actually in the library wing of this same estate house. So you don't have to go into a public place at all. You're still on the same compound, the same estate.
Okay. I have 4 successes, a 6 and a 2, a 6 and a 2, a 2 and a 1, and a 1 and a 3. And so that's all under 8, which I believe cunning.
Yep.
Oh no, cunning and guile, you said? Oh, it's 7.
No, touch and guile. No, touch and guile. Yeah.
Okay, 8. Touch and guile is 8. Okay, so it's 8. So that still does work. Okay.
Perfect. The ancestor had a little bit of hiccup. This was hundreds of years ago with the old loom and the old weavers of the area, and for somehow this is the person who sort of solved the problem with the weavers and reasserted the arcane ways of the Nefaratha. And so they kind of had a bad reputation for a while because they were sort of entertaining. It probably wasn't the Duahda people necessarily, but it could have been from Lower Adrada and some of these sort of Alagoth or, communities from across the seas. And they sort of entertained these folks for a while. We're trying to maybe learn the loom arts, maybe not, who knows, right? But just sort of playing with that, dabbling with that, and then crushed it and put the end to it and chased them all from the region again. And so and I think with all those, you pretty much get the whole story of that sort of all the official story of that person. You're able to glean through and get through. You don't have to take any books with you or continue researching. You got everything you needed from there.
Okay.
And so I'm going to keep track of you have 5 total successes in that research route, particularly based on the ancestor, right? So you're 4 and then Tony's 1. Perfect. Everyone else prepping, those 2 are taking we imagine that's taking all hours. Shezaran and Adana, you could roll 4 or 5 more times, do whatever you want to do. Again, feel free to roleplay however you guys want to set up the night before you're setting out on the journey.
I mean, I'm interested in getting to know some more of the retinue that Adana brought with them. So okay. I don't know if you want to describe some of the retinue that you've got going on. I think it'll just help me get a better sense of, what I'm going to be, what Shezron's going to be dealing with once we're out in the wild, and how to best approach certain situations.
Mm-hmm.
So I found 3 titles for the 3 followers. So the first is Grass Dancer, who is short and very light on her feet. She has spent lots of time tracking and that sort of position in like a military unit as kind of like the ground scout, and being agile when need be. Then there is Plain Punch, who has spent years kind of just like straight up karate training, where it's like striking first, like trying to eventually like shatter trees by just punching over and over until things are reinforced. And she herself is very soft-spoken, and at this stage in her life, lets the punching do it for her. She's like on the older side too. Like she's like been around for a while, and so she's just kind of like, I have my place. It's not changing, and when I need to punch things, I do. And if she's disrespected, then certainly she will immediately punch somebody. And the last one is Single Breath, who is like the assassin type. It's like the garrote is like the favored weapon there, to make quick and potentially painful work of the enemies of the state. So this is why I particularly like Single Breath is a little unruly in terms of like personality, but in terms of what good she does for combat, that's why I have brought her along. So yes, we need someone like you. So
are these folks that are they from your personal retinue, or are these sort of like the new rogues gallery that you're excited to finally be able to command from the estates of this crown?
So the new rogues gallery. Okay. I know of all of them. And I'd say the only one I probably would have come across previously would be Plain Punch, just because she's experienced, but not necessarily like I commanded her.
Okay. You've seen her out punching trees.
Yes, yeah. Her own training has lit a fire beneath myself, where
nice.
I need to show my physical dominance among other military folk. So is that Shezron? Are these these 3 excellent?
Yeah, Shezron sort of, as you're bringing her down the line, she sort of is simultaneously intrigued and horrified as you outline these skills. And I don't think that I have the llama with me, but I'm going to name the llama Clampjaw. But yes, I think in terms of like affinity, I think Grass Dancer probably is the closest to my skill set. So maybe I pull Grass Dancer aside and ask questions about the type of terrain in the area, and the anything that might prepare us better for the journey that she might be aware of in terms of the surroundings in the region and the terrain, types of creatures, types of hazards, things like that.
Because we're going to the foothills, this region is probably the most dangerous place around here. The desert itself might be more treacherous when it comes to the dangers of nature, and surviving a 2-month trek across the desert requires skill. But that would be something then that many Nefaratha would know, and that's our culture has they have taken over the desert and sort of learned how to command it and control it. Whereas these foothills by the mountain is something a little more new, and something our wagon wheels are not fit to head up these crags and things. And the mountains themselves are a place that have always been sort of avoided, not because of even them being forbidden, but because there's nothing there we need. And when kids go missing, there's just no reason to keep hanging out in the area. So that's where we bury our dead. So there will be many sort of tombs and like cairns and tunnels and things like built into these foothills where the sandy soil turns a little more temperate, where the ground breaks up into crags and foothills, and then you'll just see the huge mountains just past. So the region is definitely treacherous. It's definitely a place for, there will be scattered villages and people that live here who won't then directly sort of fit into the civilization that we've had here for hundreds of years. You know, they're going to be frontiers people, and they might not recognize the system of classes that we have, and that's always a shame.
In terms of threats, are we talking mostly creatures, monsters, or are we talking like brigands and thieves and things like that?
You will fear most. They would be considered animals. Will be the beasts of these crags. There are several different forms of lizards of varying intelligence that would be populated in these crags. Serpents that can swallow a child would definitely be one of the large dangers here, and then avians as well. The large birds that would be roosting either there's a tree city that's 100 miles away or so, that's just like a giant skyscraper that's a singular tree, and humans have never made it to the top of that tree, but there are some large birds that live there, and they can probably hunt far and wide. And so anytime you're outside of the sort of protected, scouted, patrolled environs of the Empire, you risk yourselves being free picking from avians as well. So the wilds here, yeah, definitely avians are everywhere in this particular continent, but local to this region, the lizards.
Oh, cool. Okay, gotcha. And so I guess from Shezron's perspective, anything or any person she could, talk to or interview that has had direct experience with the avians, that could offer any tips or tricks for either escaping or evading the sight of the birds would be useful, I think.
Yeah. I'll say, how about do one of your scouting rolls, do a touch move, and we'll see if from you talking to this scout, if you're able to sort of make adaptations and figure, and help make sense of her warnings.
Sure.
Does that make sense, right? You're not going to be relating to her to learn it. You have to be seeing, like, does this jibe with what I know of scouting, and how can I help protect my team?
Yeah, I think that vibes. Cool. So that'll be a target of 7 for my touch and move.
Okay.
And I'm going to roll right now. Okay. So
I'm going to put you against a difficulty of 3 again. Let's just see if you can get 3 or higher.
Okay. I can't. I can't. Yeah, the largest grouping I can make is 2.
Okay.
I rolled, which is crazy. I rolled 2 1s, and a 6, which are fine, and then I rolled.
Almost.
Oh wait, hold on. Does the 10?
The 10's a 0.
I was gonna say 10's is 0, right?
An ace.
But yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That's like one of the few rules things I read in the book.
Yeah.
I'm glad I caught that. Okay. So in that case, yeah, I can put together a 3.
160, right? So you got that 3 tech. Perfect. So with the avians, definitely, sleeping under tents is going to be the way to go on that. But I'm going to actually lower the difficulty of your scouting checks for getting away from the lizards, for your shock there too. So you're going to be sleeping on your animals under tarps and tents. Okay. Anytime you can do that, we're going to lower those scouting checks to keep you from suffering shock when you're camping.
Cool. Sweet.
Yeah, for the avians, you would already know that. The Nefaratha they're experienced in. You're not Nefaratha, I guess, but around here they would tell you everybody knows how to keep the birds away. But for those lizards, we'll give you a lower difficulty. And yeah, you folks are able to do whatever you want. If you get back to your room at midnight, you're preparing for the morning. Any other brief rolls or things that you want to make sure you have? If you want to get supplies, Adana can get you pretty much whatever you want. It's just a matter of how much you want to carry. But please feel free. You want swords? You want armor? You can get whatever you need.
So yes. So kind of the redundancy thing. I certainly want backups of everything we already have.
Got it. Officially, you have extras. Got it.
And in terms of navigating the tomb itself, I certainly would want somebody who is literate and knows of like somebody who probably has been there before, like somebody who so would like grave digging like be a profession? Like would there be like a specific person for that?
There would be, and I would say you would have access to probably, I mean, as many as you want. That particular tomb, no. I mean, it's far enough away and in a dangerous enough spot. But yeah, if you want some folks that are, folks that you will never talk to or invite to your party, you can have. We'll make sure you have grave diggers and tomb dwellers and things like that.
Okay, yeah. So just like whatever they would typically bring with them when they are in the tomb. So just to have them and allow them to trust that they know what they're doing as part of our system, that people are doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Sure. I'm not going to let them make rolls since you already picked your 3, but they will be there with their kits if they need it.
Okay. Yeah. It's because I also, my relationship with them, I also am assuming would be, I don't see them in the greatest light.
Right. Yeah.
So.
And I guess that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, keep the folks that you've named are folks that you are kind of like your comrade in arms, right? Like you're probably a higher rank, but they're like, versus just the riffraff, which is where Shezeran like hangs out with and gets along and like makes them not hate you probably by now. Who knows yet? You haven't traveled together yet. Well, we'll find out.
Yeah, we'll see about that.
They're like, I've had a boss before, and this gal seems a lot like the other boss.
Welcome to Dungeons and Dragons.